Again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning for our Australian viewers. Actually, next week, special preview, we will have a guest from Australia. So it will actually, all of my references to those watching in Australia have actually come to fruition. And we have at least one, ladies and gentlemen, at least one Australian viewer. So shout out to Ezra May, who will be my guest next week. You'll learn more about him next week. So good to see everybody here. It is a freezing, snowy first night of Hanukkah. Chag Sameach, Hanukkah, one of the traditional, most popular Jewish holidays. You don't have to skip anything. You're allowed to do anything and use electricity and get presents and eat greasy food. It's the perfect holiday. You almost would think that children invented the holiday, since it really is somewhat less restrictive than most other holidays. This year, I'm very proud of as always, really, but this year the Hanukkah card, I think, has a particular meaning. I want to show you guys, I'm going to show you guys our Hanukkah card. Put that up. I don't know if you see that. So the Hanukkah card this year is really meant to symbolize two things. One, you see the lightning bolt, which is the symbol of the women's strike, which is the name of the movement that is sort of inspired by the very restrictive abortion law proposed by the government or passed by the Constitutional Tribunal. So you see a Hanukkah made of the lightning bolts. And then the rainbow, we're focusing this year on LGBT rights as sort of our main cause that we want to draw attention to this year. So our card this year really focuses on both. The powerful message, I hope that the candles of the Hanukkah, the light of Hanukkah, shines a light toward a better future. And for us in Poland, a lot of that means a future where without very restrictive, unfair laws that are not okay for women and particularly women, but bad for everyone. But focus on women, and also the just climate that is a very unpleasant climate for LGBT community here in Poland. One other thing I did want to show you is I usually wear a mask. I'm here locked in my office alone, but so not the mask, regular black mask, not too exciting. But you see this great accessory, which was given to me by Haley Warner, which she makes them, and she and her friends and her mom's friends received them as gifts. I was very excited to get one, and what a no-brainer. How are we not all walking around with these? Take off your mask for a second, need to do something, da-da, the mask goes down, put the mask back on, da-da, mask is on, never lose your mask, easy to see because colorful. So highly recommended. I'm sure Haley will make you one if you reach out to her. You can make your own. We're all about the open source sharing here. So I just think that's a very, very cool thing. So as I said, back from New York, I wanted to thank everybody once again for all the kind wishes. Of course, I was in New York because of the passing of my mom at her funeral. So thank you for everyone who's reached out. I'm doing okay. So thank you for that. Flight back was interesting. So is, these days, very weird flying during Corona, nothing too major to report. The airports are very, very empty. I took photos. There were, I flew through Frankfurt. The flight was probably 25% full altogether. Frankfurt Airport was only one of the terminals was open, and that terminal was like 80% empty. So really flights are way, way down. The flight, there are much fewer flights. So it's not that the flights necessarily inside Europe are that empty, just because there are much fewer of them. So we had to really wait a long time in the airport to get back to Krakow. Interesting, I'm not seeing any comments. I don't know if people are writing comments and I'm not seeing them, or no one's sending any comments. So if you are commenting, then I apologize, because on Facebook I don't see the comments. And if you're not commenting, then start commenting and sending me all kinds of Hanukkah love as you should. But interesting, I'm not seeing the comments. So it's okay. Yeah, Seb doesn't, you don't see them either, Sebastian. So if you see any, you'll feed them to me, because I'm not seeing the comments on Facebook. What if I refresh? You don't see them either, Sebastian? Interesting. Facebook is very wonky today. We also tried to do something. We tried to, based on our Hanukkah card, as I said, which we sent out. Here's another plug for our Hanukkah card. Our friend Shayna Penn out in Berkeley in the Bay Area said we should make a frame for Facebook so people can make this into a Facebook frame, because it's a cool message for of support. And we tried to do that and couldn't upload it today. So there's definitely wonky stuff going on Facebook. I truly apologize if you're sending in comments and I don't see them. I don't see any comments. So hi, everybody. Don't worry. I'm sending the love right back that I'm sure you're sending, but I do not see. I will refresh the page. Sebastian, my wartime consigliere, tells me to refresh the page and I will have comments. So hopefully in a moment I'll have comments. Very soon we're going to get to our guest today. Very, very exciting guest. Really somebody who has changed the world. Not that many people you can say has changed the world. Janusz Makuch, founder and director of the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, is a world changer, and he will be my guest today, and we'll have some time to talk with him in a few minutes. He's a good guy and a good friend, and a fascinating story. Oh, there we go. Now I see all the comments. Anna, Chag Sameach to Anna Panek in Brazil. Linda from Rockland County. Hi, Linda. Sita, my dad's watching. Hi, Dad. Hope you're doing all right. Happy Hanukkah from Rabbi Avi from Efrat. Soon we'll have our whole big Hanukkah program coming up, lighting the first candle at 7, and then Hanukkah stuff every night. So those are the comments that I see. And Sebastian is also at the same time sending me a screenshot on, somewhere else. Wow, technology is just fascinating for old people like me. Anyway, now I see your comments, so you can send all the love. Very, very good. I mentioned the Hanukkah poster. It's freezing here, snowing today, I mentioned. Very, very, not my favorite thing. To be honest, I am looking, and I don't know how it works with Corona. We usually go away for New Year's. I'm not the biggest sort of Christmassy New Year kind of fan. Sorry for all of those who are. So, and also, as you know, Kasha and I, no bigger fans in the world of warm weather than me and Kasha. So we usually go away. Usually it's Israel. Last year we wanted to go somewhere really warm because it was a special birth. Also, I should say that right after New Year's is my birthday, January 3rd. So we went to Egypt, which was okay, but it was very beachy, but it wasn't the greatest, to be honest. But so this year we want to go away, but I think that the world, is divided into two types of places. One are the places that don't have very much Corona, like Australia, but that don't want to let you in if you come from a place like Poland with Corona, or certainly make you quarantine for a couple of weeks at least, but probably don't let you in. So that's one category, places without a lot of Corona, which you might want to visit but can't. And then places that you are allowed to visit, like everywhere else in Europe pretty much, but that you don't want to visit because they have just as much Corona as you have, and you can't really do all the fun touristy stuff and be out in public and go to museums and go on the beach or any stuff you might do because you're not allowed to do that. So it does look like this year is not going to be this year might be spent in Krakow, which, hey, not going to complain. We're healthy and fine and all good. And, I just always like to every so often get out of the cold. That keeps me sane. Kuba Wishak from Warsaw. Poster card is amazing. Thank you, Kuba. Sending regards up to you in Warsaw. Hope you're doing well. Good friend Kuba Wishak from the Toby Foundation, from the Toby Center of Jewish Life and Heritage, and Toby Jewish Heritage Initiative, and Toby Jewish Heritage Tours. Toby's got a lot of good stuff going on. Toby gang. Jeffrey Rolat, good morning from sunny southern Florida. Yes, Jeffrey, when I was preparing this week's thing, it was very confusing because usually you're in California and I write 7 a.m. Jeffrey Rolat time. But as Jeffrey Rolat making the big move, Jeffrey and Lori, from California to Florida, I have tagged Randy Brenowitz, also a very faithful viewer, as the 7 a.m. California time person. But maybe I will start rotating that. There was a suggestion that I should include mountain time. I will take that under advisement. To be honest, as a New Yorker, we generally in the United States see the world divided into 2 time zones: Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time, which is New York and Florida and New Jersey and all that, and then the West Coast. And we are vaguely aware that there's some other time zone and probably 35 states in the middle, but we don't usually interact too much with them, to be honest. So we're a little bit early, but well, hold on. I just wanted to get to this comment from no visiting Brazil. Brazil was on the list, a little bit far, but no visiting Brazil for a while, in my opinion. Let's wait for more people being immunized. Yes, huge news out of Britain the other day that they started immunizing people, starting to get the first, I guess, the Pfizer vaccine. And there's 2 other vaccines that are out there. I'm not sure about in Poland what's going to happen. Of course, I will wait my turn in line. But as a citizen of 3 countries, I have 3 different lines that I can wait on. So that's a good thing. I wanted to also just mention one other thing, and then we're going to get to Janusz, which was about a month ago, exactly a month ago, Lord Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of the UK, the Commonwealth, passed away, who is just a giant thinker and humanitarian and a philosopher, a wonderful, wonderful, just really wonderful human being. And the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, posted something for his Shloshim, which was an 8-minute speech by the Prince of Wales, which was just phenomenal. So I'm going to post that a little bit later, or we'll post it as a JCC, but you can look that up. It's just as beautiful as, sometimes people speaking about other people can be very, very beautiful in that sense, and really something very, very special. Sebastian has let me know that the frame is working. So we will, you can get your, if you like our Hanukkah card this year, our somewhat very messagey political Hanukkah card, which, hey, you got to take a stand, then go and find it and make that your frame, and join us in our sort of path toward a better world, one Facebook frame and one Hanukkah card at a time. So without further ado, it is my absolute honor and pleasure to introduce Janusz Makuch, the director of the world's greatest Jewish culture festival, the Krakow Jewish Culture Festival, which he conceived of and founded with his friend Krzysztof Girat over 30 years ago, right at the end, 1988, I think it was, right at the end, before communism fell. He started this festival that has become this absolute worldwide, huge phenomenon, really in many ways putting Krakow on the map, and making possible a lot of good things that have happened in our city and in the Jewish community, and making really possible what we're doing here in terms of rebuilding Jewish life in the community. We owe Janusz a great debt. And today we're going to thank him and greet him and wish him a Chag Sameach and get to know Janusz Makuch a little bit better. So how are you, my friend? Do you hear me, Janusz? I think you're muted, Janusz, if you hear me. If you don't hear me, then uh-oh. Let's see, Janusz, you want to come back in? You don't Sebastian, you hear me? People on Facebook hear me? Yeah, I think maybe Janusz, do you hear me, Janusz? We can try this over a regular. Sebastian, should I call Janusz? All right, Janusz, I'm going to call you. Janusz Makuch. I will try to call Janusz and see if we can do it via speaker. That's me, Janusz. Hey, Janusz, we'll do it. Listen, I don't know what's with the audio, but let's try to do it this way.
Absolutely. I don't know what's going on because I still use this computer.
I don't know. It should be okay. Sebastian, are we audible? Do you hear us? Not so bad? Not so bad. I'm trying to figure out where to put my phone so I can help put it closer to the. I don't know where the microphone and the MacBook Air is. Somebody can type that in.
That's gonna be a problem. Anyway, can you hear me clearly?
I hear you well, but I'm just trying to make sure that everybody who's listening, we have a lot of people watching and want to, of course, hear you. So do we either have you log in and log back out, or we just do it this way? Sebastian, my technical expert. Okay, let's try to do it this way. If we're audible, Sebastian, do you hear us? Janusz, can you speak?
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
I hear you. Okay, so let's try. All right, we'll keep it this way, Janusz. I'll just hold the phone here, and we should be okay. So first of all, good to see you. Chag Sameach, Janusz.
Chag Sameach to you and the whole people from JCC.
Thank you so much.
And the whole people in the world.
Thank you so much, Janusz. Great to see you. I feel, we're in the same city, but I feel, with all this Corona stuff, I feel like I haven't seen you in ages.
You came back to Krakow?
I'm back in Krakow. Yeah, I'm back in my office. Yeah.
I wanted to say good for you, but honestly speaking, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's those nowhere, to be honest, there's not much for me to be in the office or not to be in the office, and to be in New York, but there's not much to do really in person anywhere. It kind of doesn't matter so much where you are. But it's good. They're telling me people can hear you. So Janusz, I want to get started. We have a lot to cover. Your the festival and your life and all this is absolutely fascinating. You have so many fans around the world and what you've built. So Janusz, I want to start. You're from Puławy, a beautiful little town in the east of Poland, Puławy. So my question.
Hold a second. I have to interrupt you.
No, you're not from Puławy?
No. I know people from United States. They always want to be polite. Have you ever been to Puławy?
I have been to Puławy. Thank you very much. I have been to Puławy. I'm not. First of all, Janusz, we know each other for a long time. I'm not very polite. Janusz, I've been to Puławy because
you're country, man.
You don't forget, I've been here 20 years, which made me more polite. But I lived in Israel for 7 years, which made me less polite. So I'm somewhere in the middle. Janusz, I've been to Puławy. Why have I been to Puławy? Because I've been to Kazimierz Dolny, and Puławy is right near Kazimierz Dolny. So that's how I visited Puławy.
Yeah, you know what? It's very interesting. It's only 15 kilometers from between between Puławy and Kazimierz Dolny. And by the way, this is Puławy. It's my I don't want to say beloved, but it's my hometown where everything started when I was like a 14 or 15 years old man, and being born in a typical Polish family. I always, many times talk about it, but this is interesting. Of course, that I knew nothing about the Jews. Who could know that time something about the Jews? If they knew, they hidden this knowledge.
Right.
But I strongly believe from that moment that you are lucky enough if you have a privilege to meet in your life, the right people in the right place, in the right time. And that's what happened to me. I met a very wise man who was born in Puławy before the First World War. He was professor, and he knew everyone. The Puławy was a shtetl. It's a tiny place, so he knew all Jews. And something happened to his brain probably before he was born. He, you can believe or not, wasn't anti-Semite. Oh, miracle! By the way, it's a Hanukkah miracle. And he told me a lot about it. And, for the young guy who was so involved in the history of his hometown, the Czartoryski's family and this beautiful park and the first and second historical museum found by the Prince Czartoryska. Suddenly, I thought that I know almost everything about the history of my hometown. And he told me about the Jews. And I describe it as it was a moment of deep, profound shock. And he became my melamed, and I became his bucher. In a step by step, I realized what we had lost.
And this was still while your interest in Jewish culture, which is sort of where what I wanted to try to establish in the beginning. It started in Puławy. So you had the fire had been lit in Puławy. From your melamed, from this guy, and then what about with your parents? Was there any? I mean, did your parents talk at all? No more about the history before? You didn't really get any of that from your parents in either direction.
No, they've never they've never let me through. They've never did let me through. They just, when I told them that I'm so fascinated with this history, my father told me nothing, and my mother, he said, okay, that's fine, that's really good, cool. And I matured enough. I was matured enough that time, so I spent all my time in libraries.
And Janusz, so you come to Krakow from Puławy. You come to the big city of Krakow to study. Tell me, right? Do you remember your first visit to Kazimierz? and
Absolutely.
your first impression. Can you talk a little bit, because many of the people watching here, some have been here. Jeffrey Rolat was here in the 70s, but most people come to, you know, hipstery, trendy, cosmopolitan Kazimierz. What was your first? What year?
Jeffrey Rolat couldn't be in 70. Who could allow him to cross the border? You know this guy.
I can't believe they let him out of. They can't believe they let him out of California. But Janusz, what year was your first visit? What was your year? Was your first visit to Kazimierz, and what was your impression?
It is connected with the place where JCC right now is staying, because I came to Krakow in 1980, and I remember perfectly this day, perfectly. It was the autumn, October, and it was a really dark and a little rainy day. I was looking for the place where I could find the Jews. I just wanted to go to synagogue. It was Shabbos. So I was walking through the, totally empty streets of Kazimierz, tiny and the ugly streets, which, honestly speaking, that time made me a huge impression. And suddenly I noticed that, there's this very, very, very strange building, which we look completely differently than the other buildings surrounding me, or which are there. And I started to knock to the door, because I thought that, this is the synagogue, but it was dark in the windows, and no one opened the doors. So I started to walk around. It was Shabbos already. It was dark. I started to walk around, and suddenly behind the synagogue, I saw the small building with a light in the window. Remember, it was a Beit Hamidrash before you guys built the JCC. And a little bit shame, a little bit trembling, I knocked to the door. And this scene I remember just like it could happen just 5 minutes ago. And suddenly, who is knocking to the Beit Hamidrash? You want to pray? Go inside. Suddenly, the door was opened by the tall guy with the one eye. And it was a Shlomo Pauter. And he asked me something in Yiddish. And because I knew that this is a Yiddish, but I didn't know Yiddish, I told him, I'm so in Polish. I'm so sorry, I don't speak Yiddish. But can I come inside? And he, after this short time of hesitation, he opened the door and he said, "Come in." And Jonathan, after many, many, many years, I was a 20 years old guy that time. Now the 60 years old guy is talking to you. It was like a turning point of my life, because very symbolic, because when he said, come in. So he invited me to the Jewish world, and I crossed the threshold of this world. And I remember the inner, how this Beit Hamidrash looked like. So I met old Jews, and they look at me like, I look a little bit differently than today. And especially that I told them that I'm not Jewish. They were, well, politely speaking, very surprised.
So this was the first, so you really stepped through a door, both metaphorically and physically. This was conceptual. You had all this interest in Jewish life and Jewish culture, in the Jews from Puławy, and you read about it, and you studied about it, and you come to Kazimierz, you walk through this door, and you step into a world that you've now been in for 40 years. And so,
symbolically speaking, it was exactly like you said, and it's still moving for me, this moment.
Well, we're honored that it happened in the, right where our building is today. That's a pretty, I love that, Janusz. I didn't know. I'm honored, I'm honored to be sitting in the place that this happened to you, this moment.
But please don't put me a flag about it.
No, Janusz, if anybody listening wants to commemorate with the plaque, they can speak to our fundraising department. Anything is possible, let's say.
No, but I still remember the history. So, I'm like a witness of the history which was running through the streets of Kazimierz, which was running through Kazimierz. And of course, that time I didn't even plan. I didn't think. I didn't dream that someday we would be able to organize a festival. It was a long story.
Absolutely. So from that moment, so your interest, you have first you had interest, now you have contact. So what was that path into from this moment of contact in 1980, the Beit Midrash on Shabbat, to 1988? I guess 8 years later, you start what would become the festival. So what led you to understand that you wanted to do the festival, and maybe talk about that what events led up to the first festival?
This is very, very important question. Thank you for that, because people usually don't ask me about it. The festival, it's okay. When I met these old people, I immediately thought to myself, in a very naive way, hey, hold a second. I have to find the young people also, young Jews. Can you imagine that time? This kind of a strange thought crossed my mind. Young Jews, like almost yesterday, the Shoah happened. But step by step, I met Jurek Kichler, I met Henryk Chalkowski, and I met, of course, many other people, and especially Jurek, who was our leader, decided to create some kind of like a small yeshivot for the Jews and non-Jews, and Eva Mańkowska and Dominik Dybek and the other people. We gathered in the Jewish club on Sławkowska Street after this TSKZ.
Right.
And it's like a sign of a time. The man who started to teach us the Hebrew was the Catholic guy, Tadeusz Basta, who taught himself this language. This is something really unusual. And we started to learn Hebrew and the Yiddish. Later, the Professor Isaac Kerst came every month to us from Łódź, and Professor Friedman from Warsaw. And we started to observe Shabbos and the other holidays. We were more than involved in this world from the many different reasons. And I wrote about it also, that for Jews, for my brothers, sisters, for them it was like a reconstruction of the destroyed world, like a reconstruction of Yerushalayim. For us, non-Jewish guys who suddenly discovered the drowned land, it was like a process of discovering of Atlantis, something which lacked, something which for many centuries played and still play one of the major role in our cultural identity. And what was very interesting, no one, honestly speaking, asked anyone, are you Jewish? Are you Polish? Are you this? Are you that? No. We gathered together and we just wanted to be together. And, this light of the Judaism, the light of on the one religious, but also our non-religious culture created this unique society, small society. And we met like twice in a week in this club, in the Jewish club TSKZ on Sławkowski, passing, by the way, on the right hand, a small shop with a good wine. So we always get a good wine and we discuss. And then, Jonathan, it's very important then, I think the end of the 80s or beginning of 81st, the idea of the March of Memory was born. Mm-hmm. We were first who walked. And of course, I read more books. I attended I prayed in a temple shul. I met people, and suddenly, after a few years, and but don't forget, I was surrounded also by the institutions like a Znak, the Polish monthly Catholic Znak, and the Tygodnik Powszechny, and the Jan Błoński, who wrote this amazing, important article about the relations between Jews and Poles, and Marek Rostworowski. So it was like a world, which I could I could step in and be inspired. So the most of the people whom I met were non-Jewish people, but they were so involved in Jewish world because they had a open-minded and open heart.
So it's fascinating to me, Janusz, excuse me, it's fascinating to me, just for stop you for a second, just to get into a little bit about what you said, because you touched on, I mean, a lot of interesting things, but for me, something fascinating that I think I still see very much today, and that I don't want to say it's unique to Krakow, but is very, I think, integral to the Krakow Jewish experience, which you're saying that even right away, not only Jewish culture, but you're talking about even Jewish religious practice from the early days, 40 years ago, this sort of initial rebirth, even during communism, but after 68, after things really, you know, were pushed underground and were pushed out, this initial Jewish rebirth of Jewish life, even religious practice, were Jews and non-Jews together and doing it and not really saying, are you Jewish? Is that one Jewish? Which is something that people still come to Krakow and are so surprised by, because it's something that, and I think it seems that, you know, it's not something very recent. This is something that is going on for 40 years in Krakow, of this idea of, and which is also something I think fascinating about the festival and about your role in the festival and Krakow itself, which is the tremendous non-Jewish interest and interest and influence, and even participatory interest in Jewish life. I don't know how many places in the world have a large percentage of people going to a synagogue to pray, not to watch people pray, to pray and to join in, that aren't Jewish.
Exactly. And you know, when you ask me about beginning, I don't want to forget, I will never forget, of course, but actually three persons whom I met in Warsaw at the beginning of the 80s. Kostek Geber, Staszek Krajewski, and Monika Krajewska. And look, Jonathan, it was a time when two people from Warsaw, Tomasz Tomaszewski and his wife, I'm so sorry, they printed out the book, the album about, and they gave a title, The Last Jews. And even Kostek or Staszek said, oh, we are probably the last Jews. It was 80s.
Yeah.
Of course, the life is so unpredictable, and I believe that they strongly believe that they will be, and they are the last Jews. They were wrong, thank God, Baruch Hashem. But they also inspired me a lot. So we, honestly speak, it has to be always someone, you know, that more better than me. It has to be someone who will bring people together and say, okay, here is the vision. Let's go. Yalla, kadima, forward. Do it.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
Yeah, also, I just want to say also Chuck Fishman, if you think he also had his book of photographs, which was called The Polish Jews, the Final Chapter. So this was absolutely what the prevailing thought was at the time in the 80s.
And suddenly, you know, not suddenly also, because it's a process, sometimes like in a hidden process. But suddenly we realize that there are more and more and more people, Jewish and non-Jewish people, who are more than hungry of knowledge. Once again, from many, many reasons. It's another chapter of the story. So when we decided to organize the Jewish Culture Festival, and can you believe it was still a communist period time, we asked no one for any kind of stupid permission. We had no money. We had all vision and energy, and we invited a lot of people to the small cinema called, by the way, Micro, which could consist only 100 people, Jonathan, 100 people. And you can believe or not, but I ask you to believe me, I couldn't sleep. I was trembling. I didn't know if someone come or not. It was overcrowded. It was, I think, 107 people.
What did you call it? Was it called already? Did you call This is Jewish Culture Festival? What was the name?
That's exactly what I did, because I was brave, crazy, and smart enough, and most important, I had no consciousness. So okay, let's do the Jewish Culture Festival. It was another turning point, because I didn't call it, okay, guys, let's do the Ashkenazi festival, let's do the Yiddish festival, or let's do, God forbid, the Klezmer festival. No, we were there to call it Jewish Culture Festival. And after many, many years, as you perfectly know, we created by this name, this important, this vacuum where Jewish culture, which means Ashkenazic, Sephardic, Mizrahi, Israeli culture, could find themselves in the middle of the space, together with the people, non-Jewish people, who are coming every year to the festival, and they feel that this is also their culture.
Janusz, what were you hoping to do? Well, I'm fascinated by the festival these days, and we're going to get to it. If not, because there's so much to get to, we might have to do a two-parter, Janusz. I'm already feeling it might be a two-part episode. But anyway, tell me a little bit so that first festival is there. People crowd in. Are you surprised by the reaction? What were people's reaction to it? What were you hoping to do? In other words, why was this festival? Was it for you you were interested? Was it for others? Did you want to build interest among others? Did you have an idea of growth? What were you thinking at that first festival?
No. To be honest, and with a history, we just wanted to organize only one festival. Once again, just know and remember that it was a communist time. Even you could see the sign that communism is falling up, but it still was communism. So I thought, okay, it will be enough. We'll do the first, and even we didn't call it first Jewish Culture Festival. We just called it Jewish Culture Festival, because I didn't, as I told you, I didn't plan, I didn't think. Maybe I dreamed, but still. And what happened after is more interesting, because I had no plan, Jonathan. I had no vision that, okay, in 20 years we'll approach.
Right.
And so what happened on 1989 was really significant for all of us, because suddenly the communism collapsed, not only in Poland, but also in East Berlin, and actually in Eastern Europe, not everywhere, but. So, and we got a phone call from the new Minister of Culture, Mrs. Izabela Cywińska, who heard about this festival, and she said, guys, why don't you continue that? We'll give you a little bit, money, and then yalla. So we did it. And even that time, I didn't think that we could, develop it in the way how it was developed many, many years ago, because we've done this festival since 1988 till 1994, every second year. So we had no organizations, we had no money, we had only passion and slowly vision. And once again, coming back to the people whom you can meet in the right time, in the right place, 1990, just right after the second festival, I got a phone call from a guy who spoke broken Polish, and he said, "No, moje się nazywa Michael Alpert. My name is Michael Alpert," and we met. And we met, he was in Krakow, I met Michael Alpert and Joel Rubin, one of the most outstanding, eminent Jewish musicians, the representatives of the so-called new klezmer music, revival of the klezmer, and broadly speaking, a revival of a Jewish culture in the United States. Because it was simultaneously. We didn't know about it. And Michael told me about a brave old world. And when he told me about the brave old world, and Joel gave me 2 tapes with the music of it. And the first notes I heard just totally broken my false imagination about the so-called klezmer music. And I said, Joel, please be a musical director of this festival. And Joel agreed. And thanks to Joel, to Michael, 1992, most eminent Jewish musicians like Shlomo Karlebach, Floria Goda, of course, Brave Old World, Conservatory Klezmer Band, Klezmatics, and I invited personally Havre Hativit and Shlomo Bar. They came to Krakow. And believe me, Jonathan, they blow the mind of all people. And I especially remember, let me tell about it, remember the concert of the Andy Statman, whom I loved and admire. This Hasid who belonged that time, I don't know to which dynasty. He appeared on the stage in capote, in hat, capelush, and everything with this clarinet. And everyone, because it was a time when also people could watch all the time the fiddle on the roof. So people among the audience expected that in a moment they will hear the If I Were a Rich Man. And Andy Statton started to play the beautiful Nigunim, composed by the most, eminent tzaddikim in the very, very Coltrane way. And he showed the people that Jewish culture is not a museum, it's not a Skansen, it's not a shtetl, it's a real thing which is alive.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Janusz, so things start to get going, you start to bring all these bands. When did the outside world, but really I think the outside Jewish world we're talking about for the most part here, when did they start to take notice? At what point did people were like, oh, wait a minute, this is not such a normal thing? Even today with the world having changed, people, the largest Jewish Krakow festival in Europe or in the world is in Krakow in Poland. It's still strange, but at what point did people start to call you from abroad? Did you start to get all this interest? Did it start to come from something that was Polish to become something that was more of an international festival in terms of the interest and attendance?
First turning point was, of course, 1992, when people saw the names like I just mentioned. So it was, they are giants. Okay, let me put it in they are Jewish giants of the Jewish and basically the Jewish culture. So they were surprised. Hold a second, Makaha, Krakow, the shadow of Auschwitz, and suddenly these guys are coming very plain. And the second turning point was in 1995. And by the way, coming back for a second to 1992, that time, Jonathan, I understood that the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow cannot be just a random collection of the cultural event, music, films. No, it is, honestly speaking, never-ending educational process. Education is the most important thing. In 1995, when I prepared the 5th edition of the festival, someone called me from States and said, we are calling from the PBS, and we have ideas connected to your festival. We would love to come with Itzhak Perlman. Don't you mind? So I said, give me time. Of course they came. It was such a moving time because Itzhak came with his father.
Wow.
Who was, and both are Galiciana. And, I remember when his father met Lopez Kozłowski on Szeroka Street. And Jonathan, suddenly, in a moment, I saw the two old Jewish guys who speak each other fluently, Galiciana, Yiddish. I closed my eyes, and for a second, I found myself in the middle of the pre-war time. And when people saw later, when people watched the film in the Fiddler's House, where an essential part of that film took place during the 5th and around the 5th Jewish Culture Festival, they suddenly wanted to come and check it out. If Itzhak Perlman is in Krakow, if Itzhak Perlman performed klezmer music around the Jewish Culture Festival in Krakow, we must be there. It was something. So, and then, of course, in the meantime, I started to travel finally when I got a passport. My first trip, as can you guess, was to
Yerushalayim. I was going to say.
But I think that from the vision point of view, I was lucky enough to be sent by Michael Steinman, the president of the Friends of the Jewish Culture Festival, who visited us first time in 1992, and he was the only first Jewish guy from abroad, and he sent me to the class camp. He asked me, have I ever been to States, to class camp? I said, no, I've never heard about it. Okay, so he paid for everything, and he kicked me out from Poland to straight to the class camp. Jonathan, you couldn't believe. Suddenly, the only guy among the 800 Jews, all the shpuchas, the kids who just born, and the giants of the klezmer music, Epstein brothers, and then of course Lawrence Klamberg and Frank Law, everyone. And what stuck me and gave me impression and inspiration was that the Jewish people clothe themselves in a Catskill, in one of the most beautiful Paramount Hotel, wooden hotel, which was burnt, unfortunately, only for the one reason, to learn and to teach each other the Yiddishkeit. Hey, if they want to, approach such a level of awareness, identity, so we people who are not Jewish and dare to organize a Jewish culture festival should do the same, at least the same. So I enriched the program of the workshops, and I invited more and more intellectuals, historians, authors, because I understood one very important thing. Once again, I want to emphasize that, okay, what was, it was. I'm not focused on the past. I'm paying tribute to the past, but I treat past like a source of inspiration, source of knowledge in terms of the future. And you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Janusz, you mentioned, you talked about klezmer, and for I think many years, the festival was identified with klezmer. I sometimes still have people saying to me, I say, oh, the largest Jewish culture festival. And they go, oh, is that the klezmer? When is the klezmer festival? The klezmer festival. So I know that it always irritates you a little bit, but but my question is not about that. It's more is that the festival, I think, has pivoted in a large way. However much we can discuss, was focused on klezmer. Klezmer certainly was and still is. An important part.
Absolutely.
But the festival, certainly, even in the period that I've been here, and I've been to the festival every year. I mean, this year was of course only online, not in person like everything else. But since I came to Krakow in 2001, 2002 to Krakow, 2001 to Poland, and I've been to the festival since, is that what I've seen, and what certainly is people unmistakable, is a pivot toward Israel. That can you talk about the pivot toward Israel? It's not only like away from klezmer, it's just generally toward Israel. I think that more and more in my, I'm not doing official research on this, but certainly seems to me that every year there's more and more of a focus on Israel. Is that because you feel that so much of Jewish music and Jewish culture in the world is coming from Israel? Are you just because you're interested so much in Israel, or what? Why is that?
First of all, when I made my first trip to Israel, I fell in love with Yerushalayim, and I met a lot of people, and suddenly, I just saw that this tiny place called Israel is a place which was built by the people who came to the country on 1948 from more than 100 countries.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to imagine that each of them, symbolically speaking, was like a beggar with the heritage of the culture of the country which he and many other generations spent almost whole life. So what I'm gonna say is that the Israel still reflects and focus, of course, at the same time the variety, the entire cultural Jewish world, and the people who live over there are doing it in. They are still trying to find the new forms of expression. It was a living culture for me. It was absolutely living culture for me. Simultaneously, of course, it was a living culture in diaspora, in states, but basically framed by the Yiddish tradition. And suddenly I saw the Shlomo Bar and the people who sings in Arabic language, which is obvious, of course, taking into consideration the Sephardic civilization. And I started to invite them, of course, people from states and people from Israel. But being more and more in Israel, twice, sometimes 3 times in a year, I just became Jerusalemite. I just became a Jerusalemite. I saw how it's developing all the time, every moment. And just maybe no or maybe not, but we hosted a few amazing klezmer musicians also from Jerusalem and from Tel Aviv. By the way, the same musicians who hosted Frank Landam in Yerushalayim, and Frank taught them how to play the klezmer music. So it was some kind of a real bridge, not just a metaphor. It was a real bridge. So yes, I am I am a Yakir Israel, as you know, and I love Israel. And despite of politics, despite of who is the prime minister of Israel, I'm focused on the real country, of the life, of the culture, of the smell, of the food, of everything. But and Israel is, and I strongly believe, especially today, where Israel is surrounded by the hatred, the new anti-Semitism is nothing else like anti-Zionism. We should stand up together and be with Israel. Doesn't matter, once again, who is the prime minister and who will be the prime minister. So yes, Israel is the center of the Jewish life and is the center of the Jewish culture for me. And I can proudly say I'm a Polish Zionist.
No question. You're on record as being such a supporter of Israel, and Israelis see that, and Jews around the world see that, and speaking as an Israeli, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's clear that you touched on a very interesting point, that with all this influx of Jews, of people from all of these countries, and plus the Palestinian influence there, the Arab influence that was already there, Jews that have been living there for hundreds of years, that the center of the Jewish cultural world today, whereas at one point was Poland, and then I'm sure it became New York City and the Lower East Side, and there's still so much going on there. But without a question, considering just the amount of Jews and what you have and the flourishing environment there, a cultural environment, that Israel is the center of the Jewish cultural world today.
Emes, absolutely Emes. And look, Jonathan, a few years ago, I said I'm a Polish Zionist, and I am, of course. But a few years ago, as you maybe remember, I invited the phenomenal Paitan Rabbi David Menachem together with Muezi and one of his beautiful phenomenal bands from Galil, and so Dion Sas. And they sang together just before the beginning of Shabbat in a temple synagogue. They sang each other and sang together. And day after Havdalah on Soroka Street, they sang for the 15,000 people, Eliyahu. Come on. What I'm going to say is that actions speaks louder than the words, that deeds precede words. So we can talk, it's nice to be, we should be a human being. Come on, man, we are surrounded by the hatred all the time, especially now. Look, Jonathan, just came to my mind. What's a big loss? You lost your mother, and just recently we lost the Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. And I remember once he said there are two very important holidays when we are speaking about the rising of anti-Semitism in the world: Purim and Hanukkah. And we remember perfectly that Purim, Haman wanted to kill the Jewish people, but the Antioch Epiphanes wanted to kill the Judaism. Mm-hmm. And this is if you kill body, if you burn body, you cannot burn the souls. So the Hanukkah, which I'm gonna light my candles in a moment, but the Hanukkah is the festival of victory, of light, of our neshama, of our spirit, of our culture. I want to emphasize it once again, our culture over the darkness. People always say, why don't you fight with the anti-Semitism? I'm fighting with the anti-Semitism, bringing more light to the world.
Janusz, nobody in the world can question your commitment to the Jewish people or to fighting anti-Semitism. What you've done over these past 32 years is, it will go down in the annals of the Jewish people. And there's no question about that, Janusz.
I tell you something now, of course. I tell you something. I treat very seriously this beautiful phrase, midor ledor. When I had started to organize a festival, I was 28 years old guy. Now I'm a 60 years old guy and having the same passion. Okay, but time is passing and you never know what can happen. So I'm proud of these young people, of these volunteers. Like you have a lot of volunteers years, and this is phenomenal. And I'm a little bit, how to say that, I was born in the 19th century with a tape machine on my desk. So I'm not very familiar with this Facebook, Schmacebook, all this cyberspace. But, Jonathan, can you believe that the prologue, which we organized last time, was watched totally by the almost 1 million people?
Wow.
Can you believe that the concert prepared for us by Frank London and its amazing musicians on the top?
It was great. On the roof.
It was watched by over 200,000 people. This is something. So what I want to say through that is, because we started from this, let's say, issue, Jewish, non-Jewish, this is our common heritage, our common culture. And I tell you something, what also Jonathan Sachs said, Rabbi Sachs, as much as you have, these enemies around the world, you always have friends. And if you want to combat anti-Semitism and put the light in this darkness of our current time, you should also rely on the people who are your friends and who are not Jews.
Amen. Amen. No, listen, you make a very important point. And as a Jew and dealing with what I'm dealing with, the community and internationally, we are so focused on anti-Semitism. We're so focused on our enemies that we don't pay enough attention to the support and love that comes from our friends. And this is something that, because of our history, we've had to be so worried about letting the wrong people in and letting ourselves be hurt by people who get close to us, that we sometimes build walls and we're very afraid of our enemies. And I think that you see, today, look at something which is the most exciting thing happening in the Jewish world today. What's happening now with Dubai, with the Emirates, with Bahrain, and this, you see that Israelis, there's something like 70 flights a day or 60 flights a day going from Israel to Dubai.
Exactly.
People, the Jews and Israelis, as Jews as well, want peace, and they don't want to be surrounded by their enemies and anytime somebody reaches out to us with an olive branch, I think we can't rush close enough to it, but we need to be smart enough to understand. And this is about not only you, because you're the obvious one as this person who's built what you've built and has been such a supporter and more than a supporter, but there are so many Poles who support the Jewish people, who support Israel, who are participating in the rebirth, and Jews around the world need to a little bit let down their cynicism and skepticism and understand that all that we're building here together in Krakow, in Poland especially, is only possible because of non-Jews who are helping us do it.
And absolutely, and let's continue that. I think that we have no choice. Let's continue that, especially in terms of what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the United Nations, what's going on around the world. And you are right. So Israel has made an amazing step towards the shalom, to the peace, and what's going on nowadays. It's just, I couldn't imagine that, and I'm so happy that I can witness that.
Absolutely.
We will see.
Absolutely.
But we have to be ready. Put the light in this darkness.
Janusz, I predict 2022 you're going to have your first joint Israeli Emirati musicians playing at the festival.
With pleasure.
Absolutely. Janusz, I didn't get to half of my question, so I'm going to ask you the most important question for me right now. Will you come back and continue? Because I need to talk about the impact of the festival and what it's done. I'm only halfway through. You'll come back?
With more than pleasure.
Janusz Makuch. Janusz, my good friend, Chag Sameach. This is fascinating. Thank you for this.
Chag Sameach to all of you.
And we are proud.
Chag Sameach to Kasha, Chag Sameach
Thank
to
you.
And whole Mishpuch.
Thank you, Janusz. As you know, I'm proud to call you a friend, and we at the JCC are proud to be a strong and constant partner of the Jewish Culture Festival, the greatest Jewish culture festival in the world. Chag Sameach. Chag Sameach, everybody.